大家好，加中友谊促进会近期组织一个视频采访，就是对加中关系的看法。今天呢，我们请到了魁省绿党党魁亚历克斯·泰瑞尔。那在采访之前呢，我先简单的介绍一下他。亚历克斯·泰瑞尔1988年出生在加拿大的西岛，他是一位加拿大政治人物、环保主义者，现任绿党党魁。他是在2013年，在他25岁的时候呢，当选了绿党党魁。那现在呢，我就有几个问题呢向他提问。Alex, I will ask you a few questions. The first one is regarding our Prime Minister Carney meeting with Chinese Chairman Xi in Korean. I would like to know what is your view of this meeting and exchange?
I think it's very positive because Canada has not had like an official visit with the Chinese president, I think, since 2017, and there've been a lot of tensions between the Trudeau government and the Chinese government over that period of time. So now, hopefully, with Mark Carney, who's there seems to be a bit more of a willingness to cooperate in a positive way with China. And I think also the fact that both Canada and the United States are being targeted with Trump's economic policies and tariffs and that sort of thing, that both Canada and China need to find new markets to sell and buy their different products. So increased partnership between China and Canada is definitely something that could be in the best interest of both countries, and I think that Canada has a lot to gain from working with China, particularly in technology and working towards the environment, electric vehicles, solar panels. There's a lot of really high-tech technology that is very common in China that would be really beneficial to Canada.
Yeah, all right. You just mentioned the environmental cooperation. I would like to know what is a realistic opportunity do you think for both sides?
Realistic opportunity for both sides, I think, is that Canada could import a lot more green technology from China. Actually, just tomorrow, I'm going to look at a demonstration of a DJI drone, a Chinese-made drone that's used for agriculture. So it's a technology that they can use to reduce greenhouse gas emissions because, for example, to spread seeds over a field, well, they can send an electric drone up and they can do that without having, heavy equipment going through the fields and damaging the soil and that sort of thing. So it's an example of how Chinese technology can be used to improve agriculture and to reduce emissions here in Canada. So that's one of many examples, and I think that China can also benefit from a lot of the natural resources that Canada has to offer, and I think that with proper determination on both sides, it's possible to work out a trade agreement that's fair for both countries.
Yeah, it is win-win.
Exactly.
What do you think are the current obstacles to such cooperation?
I think on the Canadian side, the biggest obstacles to further cooperation with China is this kind of anti-China narrative that we have in a lot of the mainstream Canadian media. There's a lot of vilification of China, the Chinese people, the Chinese Communist Party, and we've seen through a series of media events where, as you know, there was at one point the big story about there being supposedly Chinese police stations located in Canada. So this is something that was not true. There was no charges that were pressed. There was no proof that was given. But it's the kind of thing that does a lot of damage to sort of the reputation of the Chinese government in the Canadian media and in Canadian society. So people, would be afraid, to think that another country is coming and opening police stations. So the media tends to play a lot on that fear-based politics to make people afraid to make people think that China is interfering in Canadian politics and essentially kind of brainwashing people to put the X at the wrong place on the ballot, which, you know, is something that is completely made up, has not been proven, and there's a lot of targeting of the Chinese community as, you know, a part of this kind of media campaign that seeks to, you know, divide the two countries and seeks to vilify China. There's also the fact that the Canadian government is sending you know, military aircraft and ships to the Taiwan Strait and challenging the sovereignty of China, and that in the media here this is being portrayed as, you know, for example, when those aircraft and ships are approaching the Chinese coast and they're intercepted, well, the Canadian media will say, will be on board and say, look how aggressive this is, we're being intercepted.
So aggressive.
But meanwhile, you know, Canadian military is on the other side of the world challenging Chinese air and naval space, so it's only natural that there'd be some sort of a reaction to that. So the Canadian public's perception of China has been negatively influenced by a lot of this unsubstantiated media coverage that vilifies China, and I think that has been the biggest obstacle to positive relationship between Canada and China. And there's also tensions between the United States and China, like the detention of Ming Wanzhou in Canada, the order of Donald Trump, which definitely put Canada in a very difficult position between, you know, our neighbor and China, a large trading partner, a very important country in the world. And so that, you know, friction, I think, did definitely not sit well on the Chinese side. But that case is closed now, right? And when I went to China earlier this year, you know, people were talking about, you know, the officials, the Foreign Affairs Ministry were talking about moving past, you know, these sort of darker chapters in Canada-China relations. And I hope that now that, you know, as I mentioned, we're both being targeted by the United States, it's really the perfect moment to restart that relationship and build on it in a positive way.
From the perspective of Quebec, you are, Green Party of Quebec, what do you think can be done at a provincial level?
At a provincial level, I think that, for one, an apology should be given about the supposed Chinese police station issue, because I know that when that happened, the Quebec government cut the funding for those community centers. So they deprived people of, you know, recent Chinese immigrants of essential services. There's people's reputations that were damaged. And I think that after everything that the Quebec government said and did about that situation that turned out to be unsubstantiated, that there should be some sort of apology given, probably with compensation even. But it is important to have an apology for that. And, you know, more broadly, I think that, you know, as is the case with Canada, that Quebec can benefit a lot from the different technologies that are available in China, and, you know, can benefit by having, you know, increased academic partnerships and exchange of information, that sort of thing. I know that here in Montreal, we've been cooperating with Shanghai as a sister city for, I believe, 40 years now. So there's a lot of lessons that can be learned in both directions, and for that to happen, you have to have open dialogue, and we have to get rid of this constant vilification of the Chinese community, get past those divisions, and work in a far more positive way towards the future, in which we can cooperate, share technology, share ideas, and you know, really share each of our strengths with the other one.
Yeah, very good, very good. So by doing that, we can make the future benefit good for both sides.
Exactly,
Canada,
because
China,
that's it. And really, the alternative to
Quebec.
having good relationship with China is having a bad relationship with China, right?
Sure.
And I think that a bad relationship with China is really against the best interests of people in both countries, really. You know, Quebec and Canada are already quite dependent on China for a lot of imported products. Like if we had a bad trade relationship, or if we impose tariffs on China, that sort of thing, like prices for the average person, like here in Montreal and Quebec, would go up, you know, as they are in the United States, right? So people depend a lot on Chinese products, and not just that, but you know, there's always the risk of, if you have a bad relationship, like the tensions could boil over at one point. And we know that Canada is sending those boats and those military aircraft to the Chinese coast. So, you know, how far could these sort of tensions go, right?
Yeah,
personally, I don't want to find out.
Third,
you know?
Third World War, maybe.
Yeah, potentially. And I think that a lot of the negative media coverage about China in Canada is sort of done with an ambition of, you know, getting people ready for the possibility of war one day.
That's
you know, and you can't just go to war from one day to the next. You have to vilify the other side. You have to tell people that they're evil and that sort of thing. So, you know, we've been told a lot of false stories about China, you know, doing bad things in Canada, trying to infiltrate Canadian politics, you know, trying to steal technology, all kinds of things like that, which really can, you know, prepare people. Another example is at one point over the United States, there was like a Chinese weather balloon that went off course, drifted over there, and everybody was saying, oh, it's a Chinese spy balloon, they're spying on us, all this sort of thing. But it turned out to be made up. There was no spy equipment on board. But a lot of the times, like, these stories, they come up and they're very sensational at the moment, and some people can get angry at China about the facts that they're hearing from these reports, even if they're incorrect. And then when the story is resolved, in the end, there was no spy equipment, there was no Chinese station, there likely will be no conviction in the spying case with Hydro-Quebec's employee, but you know, the settling of these issues is very minimal compared to the amount of noise they make when they're first reported.
The damage, yeah.
So.
Okay, good. Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Alex. Thank you very much.